Kurland's on the air. It's Yetta Kurland live. Yetta Kurland, listen in.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Yetta Kurland Live. I am your host, Yetta Kurland, and tonight we'll be speaking with Karanja Gaçuça, Kanene Holder, Andrea Ciannavei of Occupy the NRA, as well as Jesse Campoamor from Coalition for New York Voices Against Gun Violence. We will then hear from Charles Lenchner, founder and organizer of Organizing 2.0, and Maurice Mitchell from the New York Civic Engagement Table about the upcoming Organizing New York Conference. We'll also get a short update from Marriage Equality USA President Cathy Marino-Thomas on the fight for marriage equality. A lot going on in this episode, so please call in with questions. 212-868-0975. I first want to thank our media partners, Go Magazine, Labor Press, the Soho Journal, Westview News, and the New Civil Rights Movement for helping make this show happen, as well as our community sponsors, the Ritz and Whole Earth Bakery. You can pick up a copy of Westview News at 69 Charles Street. Check out Go Magazine at your local newsstand or at gomag.com. The Soho Journal is at sohojournal.com. The New Civil Rights Movement is at the newcivilrightsmovement.com, and Labor Press is at laborpress.org. Also, you can listen to us live stream at wwrl1600.com, and please join us on Facebook at Yetta Kurland Live, on Twitter at Yetta Kurland, and check us out on the Huffington Post at huffingtonpost.com/Yetta. This week in the news, in Rome, the College of Cardinals elected Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio from Argentina Wednesday as Pope Francis. He'll be the first ever pope from the Americas, but it remains to be seen if he will update the Catholic Church's views on the equality of women and LGBT people and the role of condoms in preventing disease. If it weren't bad enough that the military uses dolphins in testing, 3 military-trained dolphin commandos escaped from a naval base in Ukraine, while one, I think unrelated, showed up in the East River. In Washington, Paul Ryan unveiled a budget to slash Medicare and replace it with a voucher system for everyone currently under 55 years old. Meanwhile, the draconian sequester cuts continue to be a drag on employment and government services. In Albany, legislatures began their annual wrangling over, that's right, the budget. Issues from access to health care and prescription medications, gun regulations, marijuana law reform, and the minimum wage were on the top of the agenda. Organizers and lobbyists from all sides flooded the state capitol. We will be talking about organizing, about guns and anti-violence, about money and more right here on Yetta Kurland Live with Karanja Gaçuça, Kanene Holder, Andrea Ciannavei, Charles Lenchner, Maurice Mitchell, Cathy Marino-Thomas, and Jesse Campoamor. Call in with questions, comments. The number to do so is 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Let's go to our first segment. We're going to be talking about anti-violence and the fight for gun control. A lot going on in the next couple of weeks. So I'm delighted to have in studio with me, first of all, Jesse Campoamor. He is a community organizer, a great leader in our community. He is one of the leaders in the Coalition for New York Voices Against Gun Violence. Jesse, thank you so much for coming in studio with us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Yetta.
You got it. And also we have Karanja Gaçuça, Karanja and Kanene Holder and Andrea are all organizers and activists with the Occupy the NRA. They've got some major actions coming up as well. They're doing some great stuff. I'm delighted to have you guys in studio with us as well. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
All right. So let's start.
For having me.
You got it. Let's start with what is, Kanene, what is Occupy the NRA exactly?
Occupy the NRA is focused on
the actual reduction of gun violence prevention. As you can see, at least, I mean, at this point, it's once every 3 weeks, there is a gunman that is shooting in some municipality within the United States of America, and this has got to stop. The bloodletting, the profiteering, the hedging of American lives for the sake of profit has got to stop. There's got to be better ways in which we can all, number one, be safe in America, because what good is if we're sitting there and we're being, anti-terrorists on the one end, but on the other end, enabling all of these people to have to
interesting
be
contradiction.
Vapid about guns, not vapid, but rabid about guns.
Yeah, Karanja, why are we having nationally or locally? Why are we having such a difficulty addressing these issues? As Kanene says, it should kind of be a no-brainer that this is a severe problem in our society. Why is it happening, and why are we having such resistance to make reform?
I really think that the main reason why we're having so much difficulty in having reform is not so much because of the public, but more so because of the NRA, which is a lobby group, and gun manufacturers. So and the investors on Wall Street who invest in these gun manufacturers. They've sold guns to pretty much all the hunters that already want guns, and now they're going out there and looking for new markets for guns. So they're making pretty pink and colorful guns and trying to attract women and younger people to buy more guns. And then they're making more sort of fancy guns that look like things that you see in video games.
Like marketing ploys. It kind of reminds me of remember the big pushback with cigarettes when, the Camel advertisements were kind of targeting younger individuals to smoke cigarettes? It's kind of that kind of slick marketing.
See Wall Street pushing their, whatever, you pick any industry to find new markets and maximize their profits. And in this case, the problem, there's a very real problem whereby our loss is their profit, and we cannot stand for that.
Yeah.
We will not be we will not remain silent. We are silent no more. And, we will not allow profit for murder to go unnoticed and unannounced. So we are going to call attention. Our action on Monday is specifically to call attention to the hedge funds, the investors, the Wall Street firms. Owl Creek Asset Management is one firm that went and bought gun stock immediately after Sandy Hook, and we want to expose them. Hedge funds are notorious for being able to buy all kinds of stock. They could buy stock in countries where there's war or, any kind of...
Let me stop you for 1 second because I want to articulate two things. One is the happening on March 18th, and the other is kind of the messaging that you guys are getting behind. Andrea, I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly.
Ciannavei.
Ciannavei. I absolutely did not correctly pronounce your name, for which I apologize. What's happening on the 18th? And I know that Karanja is talking about some bigger issues in terms of your messaging, but just give us a little plug for what exactly is happening. When is it happening? Where is it happening?
It's going to happen on the 18th at 11:30 in the morning. We're going to show up at Owl Creek Management's business. And
who's Owl Creek?
Owl Creek Asset Management is the hedge fund that bought stock in gun manufacturers literally the day after Sandy Hook happened.
It's like speculating on the violence.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they speculated correctly, which was gun sales shot up because fear shot up, and they took advantage of it.
It makes me think of after Superstorm Sandy, all the what they call them disaster capitalists or whatever who kind of like it's another financial opportunity. So it's really, I think it's smart that you guys are addressing the hedge fund aspect, the financial aspect of it, and the whole money and politics kind of thing.
Well, I think it's when I think about that action, and I agree, I do think it's the smart way to go because it's such an emotionally charged issue, and so this is a really grounded, very specific way that people can get involved and can sort of say, are we as a society, are we choosing to profit off of things like fear, off of bloodshed, off of massacres, essentially.
Right.
And if I may, Yetta.
Yes.
Owl Creek, actually, I caught wind, and I haven't had time to, I caught wind that Owl Creek actually does invest in tragedies, in stocks that are directly related to tragedies. So not just gun manufacturers, but other tragedies out there. So, it's real, it's it's just a real creepy sort of firm
Yeah.
that pursues a very creepy kind of business.
Well, it's great that you guys are bringing attention to it. I think it's really important to kind of pull apart some of the back end of what the problem is. And Jesse, Occupy NRA has been, I think they're part of the Coalition for New York Voices Against Gun Violence. Yes. Tell us a little bit about what's going on over there. How did you guys come together? There's another event happening on March 21st. 18th is kind of a lead up to the big 21st rally. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the Coalition is a broad-based group of labor organizations, labor unions, faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, and we're all coming together organizing for the 21st of March, which we hope will be one of the largest mobilizations in history around in support of the New York SAFE Act.
And for our listeners, what is the New York SAFE Act?
The New York SAFE Act was a bill that was passed in January. It has some protections, such as mental health and criminal background checks. If we don't want to get weapons. A tougher assault weapons ban, limits ammunition to magazines of only 7 rounds, imposes tougher penalties for possessions of guns at schools. So there's a couple of these parts of the law that we really support, and we want it to be not just a model for other states, but also for the federal government to adopt.
So it's going to be on March 21st. Is at 4 p.m. at the Harlem?
4:30 p.m. It's going to be
p.m.
in Harlem on 125th, Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard, right next to the State Building.
What has the response been in terms of organizing, and was there a catharsis or a reason why you guys started to organize?
I think surprisingly enough, I think the opposition has really tried to convolute the conversation and say we're trying to take people's guns away when that's not at all the case. We're looking for responsible laws to answer some of the heinous, senseless crimes that have happened recently as of recent. And so we just want to demonstrate that there's a broad-based coalition of folks that really support responsible laws to hamper gun violence.
George Gresham, the president of 1199, I know 1199 is very involved in spearheading this effort, said that when he started to announce plans to organize this, he got a tremendous amount of hate mail and pushback. Maybe you can comment a little bit about that, and has it been difficult organizing? We're in a kind of New York City bubble where many of us agree on ideas of gun control. New York City has some of the strictest gun control laws in the country, frankly. Was it surprising for you to hear those stories, and what was your reaction?
It was disappointing. We originally had plans to go out to Albany about a week ago that we had to cancel because the state troopers up there had informed us that the NRA and other organizations had made some threats and could not guarantee our safety up there.
Wow.
So that's just the climate that we're dealing with is very unfortunate.
It's surprising to me. And, Kanene, has the Newtown incident, has it galvanized this country? Has it made us say enough is enough? Have we turned a corner, or will it be forgotten in a matter of time and we'll be back to square one in terms of the trying to organize and change the hearts and minds of Americans?
I think that Sandy was a bellwether. It was a clarion call. It was loud and it was clear and it was resounding because it was little children. And a lot of little children. And we all associate with a school, with innocence, with love, with safety. And to have that bubble, that womb of knowledge violated in such a heinous way because of these magazine clips that are so large. Why? Freedom is only limited by choice. What are our options? There are people who have options to sit there and load and reload bullet after bullet, magazine clip after magazine clip, which equals, you don't need to be like a mathematician. It's more death.
Freedom is only limited by choice. Those are powerful words. We are listening to Andrea, Kanene, Jesse, and Karanja here on Yetta Kurland Live. Call in with questions or comments. We want to hear from you.
Oh, yeah.
Bring it on. We're talking about March 18th and March 21st, two important events that are happening to address gun violence, to address gun control. Call in 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Before we go to our first caller, though, Karanja, let's bring this down a notch and let's talk about race here too. Newtown, we saw a lot of faces, and a lot of the narrative was about violence in a, suburban. I guess you would call it a suburban or a town setting. How does race impact the discussion on gun violence in this country and in the narrative that's going on now?
Well, Race pretty much does permeate absolutely every aspect of American society, and quite often.
Point well made. That's a fair. Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
And not necessarily in a positive way.
And not necessarily in a positive way. That's true.
But
how does it impact this narrative specifically, and how do we move this? How do we organize this movement so that we're really addressing violence against all of our communities?
I think what happened is that obviously when people saw Newtown kids, suburban white kids, it did elicit these feelings of real sympathy and empathy that perhaps hadn't been elicited by the stories coming out of Chicago, for example, and the Bronx and the South Bronx and Brooklyn of gun violence. Now, the fact that this elicited this reaction is not something that I can sort of, it's fine. It's brought us to where we are. I think that what has happened consequently is that people have brought all the other stories of gun violence along with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the Newtown definitely brought the conversation to where it is because, little white babies are more sympathetic to the public. And it's just an unfortunate truth. However, what I'm happy to say is that the conversation has changed, and indeed, we saw Hydea Pendleton, and that elicited sympathy as well. She was a sympathetic black child. So, on this occasion, we've been brought together, I think, as a country to talk about gun violence on a larger scale. And it's tragic.
And if I interrupt you, I think it's a testament also to communities of color and all communities coming together and really making sure that their message comes out as well. Jesse, do you feel like the coalition has been working effectively, and have people been coming together across race, gender?
Across race, gender, socioeconomic. I think it's also important to point out that of the 32 people that are approximately killed every day from gun violence, 50% of them are under the age of 35. So this really disproportionately affects young people as well. And so we've made a valiant effort in trying to engage the younger community to come out to this thing. So we're really hopeful and excited to see the broad base of groups that come out.
For the 21st, March 21st, 4:30 p.m. at the Harlem Building on 125th Street. Get out, be there, be part of the movement. We have a Twitter rally that's going on as well to support it. March 18th, we have the NRA, Occupy the NRA. I think it's really smart how they're focusing in on the financial aspect of it, on the hedge funds.
After the money.
follow the money, right?
Can I just give the details? Sure,
absolutely.
Thanks. It's March 18th, 11:30 a.m. Meet at 640 Fifth Avenue in Midtown. It's 53rd and 5th. And show up at 11:30. We'll have signs, and then we'll be walking 5 blocks to Blackstone Group and Cerebras Capital Management.
Great. Do you plan on delivering petitions or doing anything?
We are planning an action in the spirit of Occupy.
Yes. Cryptic. All right.
And I would
and
like.
we are asking our partners. We hope that 3 hashtags in particular: Silent No More, Moments of Noise, and Profit from Murder will be publicized and hopefully trend.
Great.
And the logic behind Moment of Noise is that we will be silent no more, and therefore instead of having a moment of silence at midday, we'll be calling for a moment of noise. We are asking people to make noise, bring pots and pans, whistles, horns, whatever they have that is noisy.
A moment of noise instead of a moment of silence.
And I'd like to add that Martin Luther King, of course, who was one of the most cherished nonviolent leaders, he said, "Our lives begin to end when we remain silent about things that matter." So we will make noise because it can no longer rain bullets.
You are listening to Kanene, Andrea, Jesse, and Karanja here on Yetta Kurland Live, talking about gun violence, anti-violence. There's an event that's happening with Occupy the NRA on March 18th. There's a bigger coalition for New York Voices Against Gun Violence. That should be a huge turnout on March 21st. Jesse, how many people do we estimate for the turnout on the 21st?
If we get 50,000 people in the street, be a very happy person.
I think the official number of estimate is a lot of people. Let's go to one of our callers. We're going to go to April. Tyler, April, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live. You are on the air.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for calling in.
I'm April Tyler, and I'm a member of the organizing team for the New York Voices Against Gun Violence.
Great, well, welcome.
And I just wanted to add to, how everyone eloquently stated, the purpose of the March 21st rally at the Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Harlem State Office Building, that historic spot in that historic neighborhood, is to, one, support the governor's effort and the New York Safe Act, and use and encourage other states to use that as a model, that piece of legislation as a model, so that we can get state by state by state and hopefully federal legislation to have common sense gun laws throughout the country. Mm-hmm. And additionally, we're holding it right there because we also want to acknowledge the massacre in Sandy Hook and that devastation to that community and those families, but we also want to acknowledge the day-to-day devastation in communities like Harlem, mm-hmm. where kids are killed, people are killed every day through gun violence.
And Jesse gave a statistic.
We want to make sure that we get as many people out on Thursday, March 21st at 4:30 in the streets of Harlem on 125th Street to make our voices heard.
Wonderful, April. Let me ask you a question. Some folks here in studio talking about Occupy NRA and their focus on the financial, the corporate end of it. Most people think of the NRA, I guess, or the way that the NRA presents itself is as a membership organization. But do you think that they're more of a corporate lobby? What's wrong with the NRA?
They are absolutely a corporate lobby group. Yeah. And so we talk about the NRA, but we are more talking about the gun lobby, because it's not just the guy who has a rifle and he's a member of the NRA because he goes out and shoots rabbits or deer to eat to feed his family. Right. They're a lobby group that is pressuring legislators throughout the country to make sure that they do not have laws, common sense laws about curbing guns.
So let me tease this apart. Let me tease this apart a little bit, April, and then I'll let you go. So I mean, what we're saying is it's not that if there's a legitimate reason for firearms, so long as there's a proper process that ensures safety, there's no opposition to that. What we're saying is things like massive assault weapons, the lack of background checks, that people can walk into a Walmart and buy a gun. These are the types of things that we're trying to reform. Why do you think there's such a negative response? I'm always shocked. Again, as I was saying earlier, there's kind of this bubble of New York City. I'm always shocked that happens. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's none of us are saying let's repeal the Second Amendment or let's go and take people's guns from them. But that is the message that the gun lobby is portraying to the people who own guns. And, like as they say, you don't need an AK-47 to go out deer hunting. Mm-hmm. If you hunt a deer, you want as clean a shot as possible because you want the deer to be intact so that you can eat it. Mm-hmm. And the message that they're trying to put out is that we want to repeal the Second Amendment. We want to take away their guns. We're going to come into their house and take their guns away, and then the government's not going to allow people to have guns.
Right.
That's not our position at all.
Right.
And we just want common sense laws and common sense control over guns in the country.
April, thank you so much for calling in. We will see you on March 21st at 4:30 p.m. At the Adam Clayton Powell Jr.
We'll see me on March 18th also.
Wonderful. We'll see you on the 18th as well. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm going to try to squeeze in one more caller before we go to the end of the segment. But before I do that, I want to ask a question. Karanja, is it ironic that, Michael Bloomberg, who has not been the greatest supporter of the Occupy Wall Street movement, has been, frankly, quite good on gun control laws? How is it that Occupy and the Bloomberg administration coexist? And have you guys been talking to the Bloomberg administration? Are you guys coordinated or working together?
Actually, Occupy the NRA, we are delighted that Mayor Bloomberg happens to be on the right side of this one issue. And for that, we embrace his campaign, and we embrace him being on the right side of one.
I think this might be history on Yetta Kurland Live right now. This is good. Well, this is good. This is the coalition building we're always talking about.
Well, just to be fair, it is this one issue.
It's very limited.
Hey. Issues that he's on the wrong side of. But I think give credit where credit is due. He's
Good.
on the right side of this issue, and we're delighted about that.
Great.
We do not decline working with absolutely anybody who's on the right side of any issue. We will not fight in Bloomberg simply because he's a billionaire or simply because he was the mayor. If he had been on the right side of the issue with Wall Street and Wall
Sure.
Street abuses, we'd have been working with him too. But he chose to, to send his army after us when we were targeting Wall Street.
All right, let me try to squeeze in just one more caller. Andrea, do you want to say something first?
I just the one thing I just want to point out is just he is right about the this particular gun safety, gun violence prevention. However, he could do better to enforce that sort of awareness on his own police department, because as we know, the NYPD doesn't really exercise restraint on black and brown people in this city. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Well, good point. Kanene wants to weigh in too before we go. I am going to squeeze in one last caller though, because I know you have a lot of folks calling in.
Some more ominous statistics. There are at least 5 million guns manufactured every year in the United States. 5 million guns. If you think about guns don't really break down. Cars break down, iPhones break down, guns don't. So if you add 4 million or 5 million to the other 4 million or 5 million, this continues to add up to more guns than there are people in the United States. And then if you look at the amount of people who are actually applying for gun permits, it's soaring to over 16 million people.
Yeah, I heard some statistic that when this gun control stuff started coming out nationally, the amount of gun purchases skyrocketed in response to that.
It's like Black Friday for guns, and it's online, and it's also in stores, and it's also in those large gun convention centers where they can totally completely supersede all of those gun laws that are usually in place. And then there's another thing about the bullets. The selling of bullets can be an underground trade as well, which is totally completely separate to the actual gun.
Let me stop you. I'm going to try to get one more caller. We have Peter from Manhattan. Peter, thank you for calling into Yetta Kurland Live. You're on the air.
Yes, Yetta.
How are you, Peter?
I feel that if the NRA was eliminated tomorrow, it would not deal with the problems in the black and Hispanic communities. For example, Willie and Jose are getting guns from somewhere, and they're not doing it legitimately. The thing is that we, in the black community, have been killing ourselves for 30 years. We used Saturday night specials before, brass knuckles, bricks and stones. The fact is that this protest en masse is laudable, but the fact is blacks and Hispanics better wake up and realize that their problem is different from those in the white community. Because if the white community's problems were solved tomorrow, you would still have the immigrants and the black kids and the Hispanic kids who don't have jobs, don't have self-esteem. They would go out and prove their manhood, whether by making babies or shooting people.
I just want to say, Peter, before we let you go, hang on one second. I got a lot of people who want to speak. But, Peter, are we going to see you on the 18th and or the 21st?
I'm protesting every day, my
Hey, love it.
Thanks for calling in.
Good.
Okay, thank you. Kanene, and then we'll go to Karanja.
Yeah, I would have to say that I totally completely agree, but I think another issue is the fact that these gun factories are in where? The suburbs. So that they're white people. All the factories are gone. We're no longer a manufacturing society. Their economies are totally completely busted except for Walmart. So what else are they going to do to feed their families? They're going to either work in a prison or they're going to work in a gun manufacturer because that's a good, honest job. But never mind the fact that, yes, we have to heal the social fabric of America. This culture of loving guns is defeatist because loving guns means people die. Guns, the whole purpose of guns is to kill. Guns are not sexy.
Right.
They don't turn me on.
Right. Unfortunately,
they
they are used oftentimes in this salacious, sexy kind of way. Karanja, and I do want to try. I'm going to try to get one more caller in. We have just a couple of moments left, and I also want to give plugs for the rallies. Karanja, just very quickly. Obviously, race and class are the core of all of this. How do we win the hearts and minds of people? How do we use this as a way to combat violence, to promote nonviolence, and also start to heal the wounds of race and class?
Sure. I'm glad to hear that Peter is going to be coming to the rally. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your comment. However, I would push back and say that this fight that we are fighting is a fight against all gun violence. It's not just some gun violence. And the legislation that was proposed in the SAFE Act and that we are proposing to as to be remodeled throughout the country is one that takes care of straw purchasing. It is a question of loopholes, the gun show loophole, the online purchase loophole, whereby anybody can buy guns and sell them to people who shouldn't be having guns, and therefore the accessibility of guns will be addressed, and therefore there won't be these guns that you see, that you find with these some of these unlawfully bought guns. So that issue is going to be addressed, and then this is where we differ, for example, with the mayor, because
I'm going to cut you off, and I do want. I think what this proves is that this is a very important conversation. It is a very complicated conversation, and I know we're having someone come back next week as well to talk some more about Coalition for New York Voices Against Gun Violence. Jesse, give us another plug. What's happening on March 21st? Tell us about it.
Well, real quick, I just want to give Yetta some props. She has some difficult last names to deal with, and she did a wonderful job with that. But I know many rallies, we get up there, we see our politicians get up in front of us and lecture us at times, and that gets boring. I think what's unique about this rally is we're only going to be hearing from families of victims of gun violence, hearing their stories. And so come out, learn more about the New York SAFE Act, send a message to the rest of the country that this is a model that needs to be adopted by the feds in each state, and come support. We really look forward to having everybody out there. It's going to be a really exciting day.
Great. And is there a website folks can go to?
Yeah, it's NY Voices Against Gun Violence.
Great. Jesse, thanks for all the work that you're doing.
Thanks
for letting us know that we'll see you on March 21st. And give us a plug for March 18th. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So meet at the Midtown offices of Owl Creek Asset Management on March 18th at 11:30 a.m. The address is 640 Fifth Avenue. That's 53rd Street and Fifth Ave.
Great. And I'm gonna squeeze in one last caller, Michael from the Bronx. Michael, thanks for holding on the line. Thanks for calling in. You are on the air.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
It's not just enough to try to combat gun violence, but we need to get after the people that incite the violence as well. Those that use the microphones and public airwaves as weapons just to incite such violence. I give you a case study, People versus Ford. Shauna Ford in Tucson, Arizona was convicted of first-degree murder because she had a bunch of henchmen who were armed, and she said that go after a certain group that were armed and dangerous. She incited the violence, and then those same Minutemen turned and killed a Mexican immigrant and her daughter, who were not only just legal immigrants, they were also unarmed, and they were also peaceful.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to stop you, Michael. I'm going to let you have the last word, but I'm going to ask you one question. Are you coming to the rally on March 18th and/or March 21st?
March 18th and March 21st, I am booked. I am so sorry.
All right, well, tell two of your friends. Thanks for calling in. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you so much
Andrea,
for having us.
Kanene, thank you so much. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with Cathy Marino-Thomas from Marriage Equality USA here on Yetta Kurland Live.
WWRL, sharing and celebrating the LGBT community's ideas, energy, and accomplishments. That's the power and the beauty of New York. A message of equality and pride.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, on Yetta Kurland Live. I am going to take a quick moment to speak to Cathy Marino-Thomas, who's been doing some incredible organizing. There's a lot happening with marriage equality. We just wanted to get Cathy on air with us for a second just to give us an update and let us know what's going on. Cathy Marino-Thomas is a long-time leader in the fight for marriage equality. She's been the co-president of Marriage Equality USA. I just refer to her as the president of Marriage Equality USA. I should start saying co-president, I guess. I'm delighted to have her on the air with us again tonight. She's a regular commentary here on Yetta Kurland Live. By way of full disclosure, I am also a member of Marriage Equality USA, board of directors. I'm proud to be one, but have not been doing the work. Cathy's been doing the yeoman's work out there, organizing. There's a lot going on. Cathy, give us an update. What is the situation? Where are we with things? What is Light the Way to Justice, and what's going on out there?
Hi, Yetta. How are you?
I'm good. We haven't spoken in a while. It's good to hear your voice.
In a while. I've been very, very busy.
I know you have. Yeah.
There are two marriage equality cases being heard by the Supreme Court on the 26th and 27th of March.
Now let me ask you a quick question. Was that purposely because March 26th is my birthday? Did the Supreme Court think about that, or is that just a coincidence? Because I don't believe in coincidences.
I want to rub your law degree on my way to Washington.
There you go. March 26th and March 27th. Go on.
Okay. So March 26th, the Supreme Court will hear the Proposition 8 case from California, and on the 27th they will hear New Yorker Edie Windsor's case, Windsor versus the IRS. We're all very excited. There are 118 activities going on in all but 3 states in the union, Yetta.
It's exciting. Let me ask you a question. Like, first of all, they're still harping on the Prop 8 thing? Haven't they given that a rest yet? Like, how many times do they have to lose before they, let it go?
You know our opponents, they're going to exhaust every appeal opportunity
like
that they have.
Squeaky wheel.
Now,
yeah.
the greatest court in the land wants to hear about this case, and I am very, very positive that our Constitution will find.
It's an interesting, I think it's an exciting pairing between those two different cases, right? It's very optimistic. Judge Walker, the judge who wrote the incredible decision on the Prop 8 decision in the lower court, incredible. I thought it was feminist. I thought it had a socioeconomic analysis. This is a conservative Republican writing this decision, so that's kind of an exciting aspect to it.
Well, I'll tell you something. The conservative argument for marriage equality only grows stronger by the day.
In favor of marriage equality, right? So let me ask you a question. We just had an earlier segment. We were talking about gun control, organizing around gun control. I'm always so shocked that there's such a pushback to that on a national level because we're kind of in this New York City bubble. What's going on with marriage equality? Is there still the same kind of pushback that we saw even a year ago or 2 years ago? Have you seen forward motion, or what's going on in terms of the
Honey, we have our opponents on the run.
Yeah.
Their arguments are constantly losing in court. They're running out of options. I think that we're on the road to victory here, but I don't want to jinx myself. I don't want to. I'm a little superstitious. I just want to wait for the courts. But here in New York, we have a lot of events going on around.
Yeah, give us a plug on what's going on and how people can get involved.
That's right. LightToJustice.org is the place to go to check on events going on in your area, wherever you are. But here in New York, beginning with a rally on March the 24th in Washington Square Park, we're going to start in front of the historic Stonewall at about 1 o'clock, and then we're going to march up to the park, and we're going to hear a bunch of marriage advocates that have been into it for a long time, and the politicians that support us in Washington, and some special guests that I won't reveal at this point.
Exciting. So that's March 24th. Let's make sure our listeners, March 24th at 1 p.m. March 24th at 1 p.m. You're meeting in front of the Stonewall Inn, which is Christopher Street and 7th Avenue. Is that right?
Right, absolutely, right in Sheridan Square.
All right.
And then on the following Tuesday night at CBST, there's going to be an interfaith service. Also, all the information on LightToJustice.org.
Good. Light2Justice, T-O, light2justice.org. You can find out all the stuff that's going on. Kathy, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I got to tell you, I mean, you've been at this a long time, and I've known you for a long time. And I remember the conversations we had where it was the uphill. We were on the bottom part of the uphill. So it's incredible to hear you say, like you said, you're not taking anything for granted. We're going to continue to fight. We certainly have our opponents out there, but the going seems to be somewhat easier. So thanks for all the work that you've done to make that happen.
I see now the light at the end of that tunnel. I see it.
Very exciting. Cathy Marino-Thomas.
Good evening.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. And last, but certainly not least, we are joined by Charles Lenchner, of whom I am a big fan, the founder of Organizing 2.0, as well as Maurice Mitchell from the New York Civic Engagement Table. They are hard at work preparing for the upcoming conference, Organizing New York. I'm delighted that they've taken time out to come on Yetta Kurland Live to talk to us about that. Organizing New York is a participatory grassroots training conference coming up from March 22nd to March 24th. That is not this weekend, but the following weekend, March 22nd through March 24th, the day after the gun violence rally, as a matter of fact. If you've got questions or comments for Charles or Maurice, please call in, 212-868-0975. Again, that number is 212-868-0975. Charles and Maurice, welcome to Yetta Kurland Live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Charles, this is not your first time at the Yetta Kurland Live rodeo.
No, it's not. We listen to you every week.
Well, you say that to all the girls, but thank you. That's very kind. So let's start with the basics for our listeners. What is Organizing New York?
Organizing New York is the latest evolution of a bunch of different capacity-building events that have taken place, in our city at different times. One that comes to mind is the Progressive Leadership Summit. Another is last year we held Netroots New York. Before that, there's been something called Organizing 2.0. But what unites all these events is that we're trying to give more power and more tools to the grassroots advocates in nonprofits and local political campaigns and the offices of electeds We're all trying to make the city, the state, and the country a better place. We deserve to have the very best tools, tactics, and strategy available to us.
And when you talk about tools, one of the big parts of that is the netroots. It's the social media, the new media aspect of organizing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, people need to understand, and I think people do understand, so I shouldn't sound so preachy, but
I like the preachy in you. I think it goes well.
Here's what we need to know. So compared to 10 years ago or 20 years ago, people are not using their home phone. They're using cell phones and smartphones. They're not reading a newspaper on paper. They're reading it on tablets and screens. They're not watching television. They're watching YouTube and Hulu and Netflix and Amazon. So that means that if we're organizing people where they're at, well, where they're at is screens. And that means that we need to be, as a movement, as a people, more proficient in using what those screens have to offer in the most effective way possible, and not leave any of the most marginalized voices somehow outside because it's taking longer to adapt to this new media environment. But guess who's doing a really good job?
If you say the right, I'll be very sad.
I'm going to say it's corporations.
Yeah,
See,
well, the irony of that is that this was kind of the internet was the revolution that allowed the peoples to rise up and catch up with the corporations, right?
The corporations are using these amazing tools that can democratize power, and they're using them to sell you potato chips and clothes you don't need.
Crowdsourcing for potato chips. You're listening to Charles Lenchner and Maurice Mitchell here on Yetta Kurland Live. 212-868-0975 is the number to call in if you want to learn about social media, new media, and organizing New York. So how is the progressive movement doing in terms of tapping into social media? Can we do better? Where are we strong? Where are we strong? Where are we weak? What does that look like?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize that we are doing better, definitely better than the right. We have in our DNA a democratizing instinct. We want to be inclusive. We want to include voices. We're the camp that had the civil rights movement and the marriage equality movement. So that and
hopefulness, right? They always say if Facebook doesn't have an unlike button, it has a like button.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I like that. It's a positive message.
Well, I'm cautious about liking Facebook overly much because of the privacy concerns and the walled garden issues. But I would just say we have an advantage. One of the ways we see that advantage is in how Democrats in the Obama campaign did really well. However, that is temporary. We need to continue to evolve, and one of the ways we need to evolve is to take tools and techniques that are capital intensive, like advertising, big online ad buys, or with very fancy produced videos. We need to figure out what does that mean if we want to make that truly democratic.
Right.
Make these tools available to every kind of issue, every kind of group, so they don't get drowned out by the folks with the most resources.
It's so interesting too, because obviously it's almost like there's these two worlds, and we're desperately wanting them to be interrelated, and we're not necessarily sure that they are, which is social media and the electoral process. The Obama campaign obviously teaches us a lot, but still, the question becomes, is your are your Facebook followers, are your Twitter followers, are those guys going to get out and vote? Can you organize? Can you mobilize? And not just with electoral politics, but with anything. Is there really a bridging between those two worlds?
I could quote a whole bunch of statistics about the ways in which it is useful, and you can make it work for your campaign. I'm not going to. I want to say something else.
Yeah.
I want to say that social media is revolutionary because it takes the stories of people who might be isolated. I'm thinking maybe of gay kids in the heartland who are isolated. They're the only one they know.
I just had a Harvey Milk moment as you were talking, Charles.
And because of social media, they can find people with the same issues and concerns, and not only find them to not be alone, but they can broadcast their voices as a group and be mighty together, no matter how isolated and alone they might be, in one particular spot. We have to do that with all the different parts of our community that are feeling that way, and give them that power to demand their rightful place in the sun. It's not just equality, it's equity. It's not just being equal, it's being visible.
Maurice, how did you get involved with this individual and this whole movement?
So it's Maurice, and
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I have been mispronouncing everybody's names tonight, Charles. I will try to mispronounce yours later. For that, I apologize. Maurice.
All right. So one of the exciting features of organizing New York is that we're bringing together sort of the segment of the community that is sort of the net roots and some of the online organizing community, and we're also bringing the knowledge and the experiences of grassroots communities and grassroots organizations that have been doing amazing work over the decades. And, you know, it's kind of a coming together of all these different segments of our movement. And so the way that I fit in is, you know, I work at the Civic Engagement Table, and the Civic Engagement Table is a network of grassroots organizations from around the state that work in many communities on many different issues. But what binds us is we're all part of the same progressive movement, and we're all trying to figure out how to despite the fact that we're in different communities, we share different intersecting sort of relationships to gender, class, race, whatever. How do we collaborate, and how do we go forward as a movement in order to take on big challenges? And so that's the grassroots group, and then you have the networks group, and there's an opportunity for these different groupings of people to build relationships, to share ideas, and share skills.
I like that you make the point, take the time to distinguish the grassroots and the netroots movements, because sometimes people assume those two are different. And what Charles said, I think, is really important, which is that through access, through social media, through new media venues, we're able to connect and have an analysis of this intersectionality so that we start talking about anti-oppression work rather than a specific part of that, or we talk about connecting the dots in movements and coalitions. So I think we're much more effective in terms of building those coalitions because we are able to have access and we are able to understand issues on some depth and quickly. But let me ask you a question. Sure. What has been your biggest obstacle in terms of attracting people to social media? Is it age? Is it race? Is it generational differences?
That might be a Charles question.
Is that a Charles question?
That might be a Charles question.
Charles, what do you think the answer to that is?
I don't know. I feel like
you're going to say there is no obstacle.
I think that we suffer from a legacy where 10, 15 years ago, because of unequal rates of penetration of different, how much bandwidth you had or whether or not you had a cell phone, there was digital divide and there were some real obstacles. But
remember when it was like a big deal when somebody had a cell phone? It had it reflected on their socioeconomic standing.
That's right.
Oh, that's gone now.
Yeah. But I would say that even though in some ways it's ubiquitous, everyone has it, everyone's using it, but in other ways there are differences, real differences. The population that only has access to the internet through their cell phones are going to be using it in different ways, and different things will be meaningful. And there's still a long way to go to make sure that the internet is seen as a human right. In this day and age, there should not be a single family, a single person who can't access the internet in a decent way, because that's how you get access to having a voice in the world, to government services, to connecting with other people, and there's a lot of work to be done in that regard.
Maurice, well, how are you involved in specifically organizing New York and the upcoming conference that's happening?
Sure. So a lot of the work that the Civic Engagement Table is engaged in with the conference has to do with sort of providing the content around civic engagement and on the ground organizing, and providing content that's relevant to grassroots communities, specifically groups that do a lot of work in communities of color and low-income communities. So a lot of the work that we've been doing has been around attracting people who are connected to and accountable to grassroots organizations, many of them that are sitting around the table, the Civic Engagement Table, and also other allied organizations, and then also attracting the skills and sort of the talent and the knowledge base that would be helpful to those communities.
So obviously this is an event that's hoping to give those skills to people to be able to organize.
Yeah.
Is it specific to the progressive community? Is anybody invited to come? Is it focused?
Everyone can come. I'd say our three core constituencies are folks who are in the labor community, staff at unions, leaders, member advocates. We've got folks that do local politics, and I make a distinction here because a lot of the folks that do national politics are kind of clued in other ways.
And you've got a great group of people working with you. I know Amy Miller has been doing a lot of work. She has tremendous inroads into both the Occupy Wall Street as well as the electoral world. So I think it's nice the way that you're bridging, and you talk about unions getting involved. So what can people expect if they come, and why should all of our listeners come out on March 22nd through the 24th to take part in this event?
Well, If you're politically active, you might wonder, what is it about the low turnout primary elections in New York City that make things so weird for us, so hard, so good for incumbents and hard for people who want to make change? Let's unpack that, figure out what some good strategies are. If you're concerned about how in some parts of the city you have machines that are able to exercise a little bit of unaccountable power, you want to know what can be done about that. There's a session on that. You want to master certain web authoring tools like Drupal or WordPress. You want to learn grassroots fundraising techniques. There's just so much on offer. You can check it out at organizing20.org to get more information.
Organizing20.org, or if there's something that's happening like a Spectre pipeline in your neighborhood and you want to do something about it and you don't know how to necessarily organize. It's also, right,
you'll meet great folks from 350.org.
There you go.
They will help you.
There you go.
Right, and I just want to add, I think to me, one of the greatest values of having a conference are the things that aren't really listed, right? So the cross-pollination of ideas, the relationship building that happens, sort of the spontaneous things that happen at the conference, that when you're in a room full of people who have a fire in their belly around change, really great things happen. So I would invite people who have that fire in their belly around change to be in a space where other people are thinking and challenging themselves around how to develop their tools, how to sharpen their tools towards being the best agents of change that they can, and creating community around that.
Yeah, and some people who are kind of techno-adverse, they don't see it as something that's inviting or exciting. It really is, and if you meet like-minded people who are organizing around the same issues, using the social media actually is just kind of exciting, interesting next step.
Well, what really excites me about this conference is that you're going to have folks who do all of their organizing online, and folks who probably do almost all of their organizing on the ground. Developing relationships and sharing information with one another, because all those tools are valuable. On the ground tools are valuable. We just the last segment was about a big rally that's happening, right?
Yep.
And were
you tweeting about it while you were in the green room waiting?
Absolutely, and that shows the relationship.
Right here, Yetta Kurland Live. It's exciting. It's dynamism.
But there's a relationship between the online tools and the on the ground tools.
No kidding.
And so we want to create a space where those like sort of unnecessary and arbitrary boundaries between online and on the ground are being dissolved, and people are learning from one another.
Deconstructing boundaries. It's an exciting time. A lot of millennials will be there as well, I'm sure, but everybody is welcome. Organizing20.org, www.organizing20.org, pardon me. It's from March 22nd through March 24th. And quickly, before we end the segment, let's go through. There's going to be actually 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Can you just give us a little bit of an overview of what each of those days are?
I'm going to start from the end. Sunday is going to be our really big day with what we call a Roots Camp Unconference. That means a lot of the agenda will be decided that morning by people who show up with something that they want to share or learn about. And in that way, it's a much more democratic form of sort of doing this than the other days. Saturday...
Meaning anybody can show up and have a panel or a workshop on an issue that they care about.
Exactly. And there's a way to submit your ideas in advance, but you can show up and end up presenting the best session of the day. On Saturday, we have a full agenda that's listed. There's a really healthy mix. This is not for young people or millennials or tech-savvy people. This is for everybody. We're going to have everything from helping you get your first Twitter account to showing you like how not to be booted off Facebook, all the way to advanced techniques and software like Nation Builder, Salsa, Civi CRM, and everything in between.
Wow. And then what happens on Sunday?
So Friday, I'm working backwards. Friday, we're going to have
Friday, right.
Yeah, Friday, there's a lot of staff from organizations coming. They have very specific training requests, and we're busy meeting them, tailoring what they need in their offices to what we have on offer. And there's this amazing community of volunteers coming out from all over the country to help do this.
Great. Organizing20.org. Charles, Maurice, thank you so much for coming on Yetta Kurland Live. We will talk to you next week. 10 p.m. here on WWRL 1600 Equality Pride Radio.
Thank you.
The preceding program was independently produced. The views and opinions expressed were those of the program host and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of WWRL, its staff, or management.